Hey everyone, let's get started with the meeting shortly. Uh, Before we start, here is the meeting minutes. Please add your names to the attendees list. And if you have any topics to discuss in today's call, please add it to the meeting minutes as well. Uh, it looks like we have some newcomers on this call today. So we'll get to that in a couple of minutes. And so, yeah, let's get started. Welcome everyone to the Meshery development meeting. Today is the 15th of September. And like all other Layer 5 community meetings, this meeting is also recorded and the recording will be published onto YouTube. With that said, we have a couple of newcomers. So if you'd like to introduce yourself to the community, this would be the right time. So, and you can also get your 20 seconds of internet fame as we upload this video on YouTube. So without further ado, Moa, would you like to introduce yourself? Oh, uh, am I pronouncing it right? Moa, I think this is your first time on the Meshery development call, right?
Hello, everyone. Yeah, sorry, I wasn't able to hear you first.
Okay.
So, so yeah, I just joined the community yesterday, and I am not. I don't know what is happening right now, so I'm just trying to understand the things, and I am just in my break from work, and I'm trying to hear and understand from you what is going on, and if there is no problem, let's see. Do you want me to present myself?
Yeah, if you could, like, we would like
Yeah.
to hear more about you. Uh,
Okay. So I am. My name is Mohammed. I am 26 years old. I am from Morocco. I am a full stack developer from using mainly Laravel and Vue.js. And I was looking for a project to contribute in on GitHub, and I found you, and that's it. That's it until now.
Sounds good. And like, oh, Lee has something to say.
No, I just Mohammed. That's fantastic. Well, lucky
Thank you.
us, I suppose. It's good of you
Thank
to
you.
jump in. Yeah,
Thank
we
you.
yeah. There's a couple of UI frameworks that get used around the projects. Laravel isn't one of them yet. There is some Vue.js. It so happens that it's in well, it's in this project called Image Hub. And it's that project's kind of hard to explain. Actually, it was just anyway. There's nominal use of Vue.js, but there's a lot of React floating around. The site that's being shared right now, it's done in Gatsby or in React.
Yeah.
The Meshery, the project here that we're talking about is React with Next.js and some Billboard JS for charting that we need to make more use of, actually. But anyway, just a really brief kind of tour.
Thank you.
Yeah, good to have you on. That's great.
Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you, Mohammed. Rishabh, did you get a chance to introduce yourself on this call?
No, it's my first time.
Nice. We'd love to hear about you.
Okay, so I'm a third year undergrad from India. Also, I am a full stack app developer and front end web developer, intermediate front end web developer, and that's it. Nothing much. Thank you.
Awesome.
Uh,
We have a lot of stuff going around in the front end. Like I'm sure, like you will see some of the demos today. Yeah, you'll surely find some good areas to contribute to on the front end as well. Nice. Welcome, Rishabh. Uh, Anyone else who is joining for the first time?
Yes,
Hi,
I'm joining
Mr.
for the
Matthew.
first. Good day, everyone. I'm Wisdom Matthew. I'm a second year undergraduate student in Nigeria, computer science. I'm offering computer science. I'm joining for the first time. Yeah.
Sounds good. Thank you, Istam. If everyone couldn't hear him, Istam is from Nigeria and he's a computer science student. Welcome to the community, Istam. Good to have you here.
Thank you very much.
All right. I think that's all the newcomers. We are already sun after, so let's get on to the topic. If anyone missed introducing themselves, please feel free to do that on the chat. So moving on to the first topic for today, Nitish has some update on his recent initiative on introducing Redux in Meshery UI. Nitish, would you like to take it from here?
Yeah, let me share my screen.
Yeah, sure.
So yeah, so first of all, like to give people who doesn't know what is happening here a context. So we have actually been like there was an open proposal to implement Redux and some other bunch of stuff to I mean to improve the state management of Meshery UI, which is currently it is okay, but that the approach that we're following right now is not scalable. So there was a open proposal to change to using Redux and Redux Observable and other frameworks as well. So now, if you want to know more about that proposal, you can use this link, and you will find what it is about and all the stuff. And recently it got accepted, and we were working on it on implementing it in our Meshery UI. So there has been it has been 2 weeks, and actually I told in the last meeting that by September 15 we would be able to. I mean, like I would be able to integrate most of the backend stuff so that people who are interested in contributing can start slowly and gradually start contributing to the to this initiative. So yeah, so I was actually able to do pretty much 90% of the integration, but then still some little parts of it are it's left. But it should not actually stop us from inviting people to start contributing to this. So basically, like this is the branch like that is in which we are going to work on. So it will be kind of like unfortunately we wouldn't be able to do it in piece by piece. So we'll have to it will have to be a sudden change. So the branch that we're working on is Meshery way restructuring, and the link for that is also there in the meeting minutes. So if you want to take a look at it, and so actually I have updated the README as well, so that so that it is currently in sync with the structure and the changes that I have made. So basically, I have made some structural changes to the whole code base itself. So I have actually made it. I mean, I have descriptively written some documentation as to what each of those things mean and how people who are new to this can contribute. So if people who want to start contributing to this, they I would advise every one of them to just first of all follow this thing, and from there, if you think about what we have to do, so since I told that backend integration is almost complete, so the next we would be thinking about like what we should be doing is to start creating UI components and using the data that we're receiving from backend to display it. And so for that, like, yeah, so we can actually start with the dashboard page for now. So basically, it wouldn't be any different from what we have right now, because there is not any, I mean, there's not change in the functionality or something. So we would just take the same thing that the current Meshery dashboard is doing, but then implement it at the, I mean, like the basically refactor the whole code and implement it in a more efficient way, or if you can call that. So yeah, people who are interested in it can ping me in Slack or whatever, or wherever. So, and we can get started with this. So first, like, reading the README file would be the first thing to do. And yeah, if you guys still have any questions on based on that, or if you want to ask something, then yeah, Slack would be the place, I believe. Or yeah, and yeah, if people who are interested can actually, we can actually start this initiative and keep it going. So anybody have any questions?
And Nitish, how, I don't know how you want to estimate it, but using whatever method you want to do to estimate, how far away do you consider we are from a PR to merge this to master?
Not sure. It depends on a lot of factors, but I would say if everything goes well by the end of September.
Okay, got it. Which is consistent with your last estimate, if I recall.
Yeah.
Is good. And you had said that September 15th, like today, and you're doing it now, is a time wherein the restructuring that's being done and the introduction of Redux Thunk and Redux Observable, that is it true that within this branch, you've taken a couple of components, kind of, not only have you restructured the way that the UI is laid out, just in terms of the file system, but also you've taken a number of components and refactored them to, you know, to this new style that incorporates Redux. So is there one component in here that you would say makes for a good reference for others to potentially take, for other individuals to take different components through that same refactoring?
Yep, actually I do have. So basically, like, the structure that we're implementing is, if you want to know more about the structure that we have, I have actually written about that in the README file as well. But if you want to know more about it, it's basically what Redux toolkit advises us to follow. Basically, the Redux team advises us to follow. So that is basically what we're doing here. So if you look at that, like, we have split up the functionalities that Meshery is providing into such folders so that it is easy for us to manage. So in this case, if you the Meshery components is, I would say it is pretty much, I mean, like, it's very solid as of now. So we do not have to, I mean, like, yeah, this can be taken as an example of how we should implement other components. Other components are not totally as solid as Meshery components as this particular feature is. So, but still they are, I mean, like, the integration is all complete, but then it is, this would be the ideal thing to take as an example for it. So if you go over here and inside the components, you have these two components, like, yeah, this would be the ideal, I mean, this would be an example as to how we should structure each and every, I mean, basically we have two uh, I mean, two type of components that we're going to create. One type is that they actually do not one type of component actually fetches the data from the backend and then passes into another component. And yeah, that structure is basically followed here. So these two components would be the example for us to basically this is what how we should create React UI components. But then if you want to know about creating the whole structure, then this would be the ideal component to go for, if I made sense.
Good. And Barak has an open PR to review that might be a good starting point for those that want to be involved here. So Nitish is presenting this so that, yeah, everyone's aware, everyone can, this is kind of the ground floor for this new architectural approach. Is anyone on the call looking to learn more about this?
Yes, I can take it.
And then I missed that. Was that Moa? I missed the.
Yes, yes.
Oh, nice. All right. Very good. Cool. And Aditya, and then Amia, you had a question, I think.
Oh, hi. Thanks, Lily. Yeah, actually, I had a question. I didn't want to interrupt in the flow, therefore I just raised my hand. A couple of days ago, I was trying to install Meshery on my AKS cluster and a couple of issues. So I want to really understand what is happening. So therefore, to understand what is happening under the code, I'm in no way Go expert, but if I clone the Meshery product, this particular repo, and try to go through the repo, would that be of any help? Where I should make a start to investigate the issues which I'm encountering? I think the guy from here, they are more across with the issue which I'm having. I'm not able to install Meshery on my cluster.
Okay, good. Yeah, so there are two. So you're right. That is a different topic. I didn't realize. Yeah, I would say if you're looking to deploy Meshery, do not clone the repo. That's not necessary. You don't need to build the project. You mesheryctl should be your answer. But yeah, to be concise, so maybe hold on to that thought. Maybe we can.
No worries. Perfectly fine. I'll hold on for. Thank you.
Yeah, no, good. Others, feedback for Nitish or other people that are looking to engage. So Nitish, maybe next time that we speak to this next week, since we're about a couple of weeks away from potentially a review and kind of a merge, maybe next week it could be a demo, kind of a quick analysis of the way that the components have changed, the way that the system works.
Yeah, I think we can do that.
Nice.
Yeah, we can do that.
Good. The diagram that you have in the design spec is really helpful to understand those components. There's a lot of interactions that go on.
Thank you, Nitish. So the links to everything Nitish mentioned is in the meeting minutes as well as in the chat. Going on to the next topic, Ashish, you have a couple of topics. Would you like to start off with the seed content, like perhaps a demo?
Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Yeah, before the seed content thing, a little quick update on the Meshkit. Actually, I have made this PR in Meshkit. I have added few customizations in the way the components are being generated. So a few things are like I have introduced this callback function. Of course, told me because in future we might need to dynamically modify the definitions and schemas that we are producing from this function. And initially, this function only was taking YAML as an input, but if I want to generate components for Kubernetes, the Kubernetes API, Open API actually gives us the JSON, so we need JSON. So basically, a bit of customization in the Meshkit. So once this PR gets merged, I can write the function for generating components. The Open API JSON schema actually is not very smart, so filters would have to be written. So it will take me one day or something like that once this PR gets merged. So that was about the updates in Meshkit. And the second thing, the second thing was the seed content capability. So I can give a demo. I can give a demo of this thing. So so if I run Meshery server, I have seeded content in there is basically pre-baked binaries, WASM binaries, and pattern files inside of our Meshery's Docker file. So for the local provider, these things get registered with the database. And now if I go and reload this, of course there are no applications because I'll discuss this later. We can see filters here. These filters are pre-built into the Meshery binary, and these are the patterns. So and I have made I had actually made this PR yesterday or day before yesterday, and I have made few changes in the PR to basically I've added this seed content function as a method in the local provider, because the remote provider is not concerned right now with this remote, that thing, the seeding of content for the remote provider will be added in the Meshery cloud. So this is for the seeding of patterns and filters. Now, upon the applications, for the applications, different adapters have different applications. So that we would need to discuss. First of all, we would need to basically bake those applications into Docker files of those those given, those basically adapters, and from here Rudraksh can that's the CI thing. So Rudraksh will first go ahead and bake those binaries and not binaries, basically the applications inside of adapters, and then I can do the same for the seeding, same for the applications. I'll just have to introduce one endpoint in the Meshery server that will receive the HTTP request. Like when the adapters spins up, we send in, we basically register the capabilities of the adapters. At the same time, we can also send the applications, and those applications can be seeded then into the Meshery server. And different, basically different adapters can seed different applications within them. So that would be a subject of discussion. Rudraksh, maybe you can take it from here.
Yeah, so the only concern with that would be like right now, all we have for sample applications is the manifests that are shipped by default. So we need some patterns for them, so that it would be or patterns or application files. So we'll bundle them. I'll create an issue in the service mesh patterns repository for this. And once we have this, similar to how we fetch patterns in the Meshery Docker image, we can also fetch them in the adapter. And then Ashish can take them and register them with the Meshery server, and they can appear on the applications page. So this is still to be done.
Will users get a notification in the notification center if seed content fails to load?
Utkarsh, you might have something to say on this.
I haven't looked into the complete implementation yet, so I'm not sure if an error here will result in a notification. Although it can, I mean, if the implementation wants, I think it can, because there is a channel available for sending SSE events, which we actually use for notification at the moment. We should be able to pipe this particular error into that channel for
right now we're not doing that.
Cool. Yeah, just a good note to to consider when things go sideways. Or at the moment, has there been additional thought toward what happens on upgrade? To the extent that someone there's certain seed content that people may not have modified, but patterns, for example, someone may have modified the out-of-the-box patterns. That's a big question. Really, I guess the way to make it small is there any written thought as to what constraints to put on the system or what behavior to, and if not, then it's just a note for the design spec.
You're saying that the seeded patterns can be deleted from the database, yes, but they are still at the file on the file system. So at restarts, they will get re-registered. So there is no way user can permanently delete it, except for, of course, going into the image and deleting them explicitly.
Cool. The area where users will be up in arms, well, they'll be really upset, is if they've taken a pattern that comes out of the box, they've spent any amount of time configuring it and customizing it to suit their specific needs, and they upgrade and find that, oops, the customizations are gone. It's back to vanilla pattern. And so it's probably probably just a note. So this is potentially a design spec all into its own, but certainly needs to be lodged as a comment in the existing spec. It's about content management.
Okay. As far as I know, I don't think there is any way we are persisting, introducing any kind of persistence for the local provider right now in the Meshery server. So we'll need to do some kind of persistence to actually store, to actually do manipulations of the file system as the user makes changes.
Well, no, not actually. Well, so, okay, good. Yeah, let's leave maybe, the inaccuracies in that statement have me biting my tongue. Good. Yes, true. And not true at the same time. And geez, boy, it's really hard for me to bite my tongue. Well, let's talk about it in the spec. It's good. It's good. Great. What's been shown. But does anyone else have feedback on what was shown? It's really exciting, actually. Does anyone not know what the heck Ashish is talking about? Now is a good time to say it. And you can do it anonymously or like. Are we growing content? Is that what we're doing? Seeding it? Or what does that mean? I'm being facetious, I guess. For the majority of the folks that are on the call, just to be aware that as Meshery in its upcoming release, the .6 release, will have its first in some areas, but more robust support in other areas for WebAssembly filters, the management of them, for the incorporation of real applications, real workloads, not just sample applications that have been out of the box before, but workload for ingesting and managing workloads that real deployments have. It'll also have support for patterns and allowing people to configure those and import them and change them. And so that's those three things right now. Those three things are considered content: patterns, filters, and applications. As such, they have some very similar concerns about the life cycle of how they're managed, how that content is managed. The reason that Meshery is being seeded with this type of content is to provide value out of the box, like value when you deploy Meshery. It's great that Meshery is something of an extensible platform. And that means that people can bring their own content because they can extend the platform in that way, or they can, but in order for Meshery to be initially useful, it would be great if there were things there. You can imagine something like Docker Hub, if it was put up and there were no containers available for people to download and run, it may not have gotten much traction, right? Like, so you need to provide some content. And all of you have been working on various, on different content. Some of you on patterns, some of you on applications, some of you on filters. Cool. Right now, is the user ID that's being assigned for the seed content, is that a static setting?
Yeah, basically the function that seeds those contents returns the UIDs of all of the patterns and filters, the ones which were registered. So actually, I'm also doing a cleanup. There's a cleanup function because if you're running Meshery locally, which would be done in the development environment, if you keep restarting Meshery each and every time, the filters and patterns will keep getting re-registered in the database and it would start to bloat. So there is this function which actually takes in the UIDs returned by the seed content function and then deletes those every time Meshery server basically shuts down.
Yeah, I'm glad you called that out because that's actually what I'm referring to about content management. That would be of surprise to people that they would lose that their things that they've curated or changes that they've made would be wiped and reloaded. I know that you're saying this is being done for development, but we'll want for development to work much like it does when Meshery is deployed. So So good. So there's a number of discussions to be had around content management. Nice. The flag, are you using a flag to determine whether or not Meshery is built locally or deployed?
No.
Okay. Probably should give some thought as to how we're discerning that. The logging that's being used, that's from Meshkit. Okay, cool. Nice. Oh, seed count. There's a seed content function. That's cool. Cool. Nobody else has comments? Back to you, Navindu.
Thank you, Ashish. So moving on to the next topic, Neha, you have some to discuss about the static and dynamic boards.
Yes. So actually, I have worked today with Dhruv to understand the basic concepts. I mean, just we figured out the static board or the code which he showed me. But before that, on this issue, I have I want to understand the design, the installation part before we move to the metrics part. So here the question here I have is do we want to go with Helm chart installation, and if we want to go, then do we need to implement this in Meshery server or any of the adapters? Right now it's in Istio, so that part we need to understand here. And after that, maybe we can move to metrics part on static and dynamic boards. Lee, am I correct? Just wanted the, or any other
Yeah, that's a good, yeah, it's actually a good, yes, I think is the answer. And then also it's a good question for everyone that's on the phone to think about a little bit. And it's, there's an invisible line of responsibility that's drawn between prerequisites that need to be available in an environment and what Meshery brings. And it's not always easy to tell where that line should be drawn. Right now, one of the lines that's drawn that's significant is Meshery is a bring your own Kubernetes tool. It doesn't bring Kubernetes for you. Prometheus isn't part of Kubernetes. Helm isn't part of Kubernetes. I'm just using that as an example to help everyone reflect on for a moment. What should Meshery bring? What should? And so, good. Maybe we'll, if we can discuss this verbally for a moment. So the proposal is, or there's sort of an acknowledgement that the Prometheus and Grafana instances that Meshery will connect to and use, to date, or well, the built-in support for that. Meshery has built-in support for provisioning service meshes and allowing users to provision different configurations of that mesh. Many of the meshes, you can configure them to have Prometheus or Grafana inside. Good, so Meshery supports that. Meshery also supports discovering a Prometheus or a Grafana that you might have deployed separately.
Yeah.
Good, and then so the question becomes, so there's an acknowledgement from the service mesh projects that the Prometheus and Grafana that they include are oftentimes duplicative of existing deployments, and they're also generally incomplete or maybe not production ready. And so all of that is good context for for asking ourselves, should we require that users bring their own Prometheus, expecting that they probably would have it anyway? Should we facilitate for deploying Prometheus and Grafana? There's one reason why Meshery should really be inclined to do this, or maybe there are many reasons, but one of them is that for Meshery to give people, immediate value and show them metrics about what's happening to their workloads, what's happening to their service mesh, to be able to run a performance test and collect information about metrics, performance metrics about the nodes that are in the cluster. It's going to need a Prometheus that is capable in this way. It's going to need a node exporter.
Yeah.
So those, yeah. So I'm trying to tee up that line of thoughts for others.
Yeah, actually, like, so if we like keep this as it is for now, and can we focus on the metrics part of like node exporter and all those things? Because this, which I see in the issue is mostly on installation of using Helm charts, which we don't have right now.
Yeah. Anybody else have thoughts?
So instead of removing issue add-ons, we will add capability to install Prometheus and Grafana via Helm charts, right? Or we are trying to replace the add-ons because actually they come with default configuration for SEO.
I don't think we mean to replace that. It's just include one more instance where it would automatically install Prometheus, I guess, in case it isn't there. That was what was going in my mind when I said this. Like, auto-enforcing that if I don't find a Prometheus, then I will install it.
Okay, so capability in Meshery server.
Yeah, in Meshery. Yeah, it will end up in Meshery server if you do it that way. But is it a good thing? That's the question.
Yeah. So yeah, so I guess good thoughts. Good. Yeah, what Drew said is true. Well, so what caution?
Yeah, but another question here is how do we like support upgrades and all here to latest Prometheus? Like if we move to Helm charts, I see like there is a Prometheus operator, which like very active. Where like they recently put the updates on the operator side, and we get a lot of new features in that. So are we supporting in the all these and HTTP add-on? Or I mean,
Because
how?
then where does it stop after that? One way to, it's a slippery slope. It's like, well, you do this for Prometheus, can you do it for this? Can you do it for all my app one way to think of it is as curating a select set of seed applications or applications that come out of the box that you can optionally deploy. The Prometheus operator, super popular, also something that Meshery needs itself. So if we were to seed the Prometheus operator, support it through as an application that Meshery can deploy, that would satisfy what Samir is looking for. It potentially then also, Meshery can also self-satisfy. Hopefully no one's mind is going to the gutter on this, but by way of deploying a node operator to the extent that one isn't available. And it would do so using this seed content. So Meshery does have does interact with Helm a fair bit. Actually, a number of Meshery components are deployed via Helm programmatically. And so to provide support here, when you think of it in context of it being a seed application, is like nothing. But the statements, Neha, that it's actually really there's a lot of wisdom in that forward-looking statement that you'd made about, well, geez, like what goes on? So then does Meshery, since it provisioned that app, is it then ongoing responsible for the upgrades of the continued lifecycle management of that app? It's like, that has to be written, like whatever the answer is, it has to be written down and clear. If Meshery uses it as a prereq to collecting the full set of service mesh performance metrics to satisfy that specification, and so Meshery is dependent upon Prometheus node exporter being there, then the answer it probably becomes yes, Meshery is responsible for that upgrade, but maybe not the rest. And so where do you draw the line? So writing these things, like getting those either into a spec or just on the here onto this issue is a great way of advancing it. Like I think we clarified a few things just now that would be helpful. But if you boil it back to just, will Meshery provide a generic mechanism to deploy Helm packages? If the answer is yes, then like the answer should be yes for this as well. The value that Grafana and Prometheus come with as they are packaged by service mesh projects is that those projects curate boards. And they curate metrics that should be collected. So just as a side note, that's what Rudraksh was saying as well. So Neha, to leave you hopefully unconfused, it's like, hey, I think there's a lot of positive sentiment toward this particular issue. A couple of things to potentially write down and sort of draw the line on, like upgrades or whether or not the Prometheus operator is supported as a seed content for applications. And then you're right, like the other step here, the other related work here being understanding what's being collected in static boards and what's left unsatisfied by the spec. So.
Okay, let me like work on this, writing a spec which mentions what all we have and what is supported by operator. And apart from that, like maybe I will focus on the metric side as on the static boards, what we have. And actually today I got like installation of Prometheus and Grafana on my setup. Dhruv helped me. Thank you, Dhruv, for helping this out. So I will take a look there.
All right. Thank you, Neha. I have a link to create a spec. Like it shows how you can create a spec. All right. Moving on to Rudraksh, would you like to talk about deploying Meshery in EKS?
Yep. I'll steal the screen.
Yep.
Okay, so little bit of background on what is going on. It is about deploying Meshery with EKS, like making sure that it works with EKS deployments. It all started some time ago when a user from personal.ai named Pala Sista, he was trying to deploy Meshery on his EKS cluster and he was facing some trouble. So he reached out to us and we helped him debug. There were some bugs that came out of that session, and one of them was about not being able to connect Meshery deployed in Docker to his EKS cluster when he tried to run mesheryctl system config EKS. And the error that we saw that time, it was more like AWS executable not find in path. Our immediate assumption with that was it was due to shelling out, like we were using some hacky scripts in mesheryctl to actually configure the user's kubeconfig to be compatible with the Meshery server, but that was not the case. This error is actually not from mesheryctl, but from the Meshery server. It's actually when the client libraries try to authenticate with AWS, they try to use the AWS CLI. I have written some of this down in this issue, so I'll also summarize it right now. So basically, there are client Go credential plugins, and some of them are supported uh, for cloud providers. Some of them are supported by the KH client library natively, like Azure, GCP, OpenStack, and other. But however, AWS is not supported natively, and it depends on the AWS CLI. So the KH client library needs AWS CLI in path so as it can connect with the cluster and interact with it. Basically, it's written here. This is not a problem in cluster deployment. At least I haven't faced this problem till now. Meshery in cluster works with the EKS, and you're able to deploy adapters. And with service meshes, there was only a bug about service account. I guess that will be a little different, but for now on Docker deployment. So basically, the client library or any kubectl binary you would use, that would need to authenticate using this command, AWS EKS get token. And this is how a kube config for an EKS cluster looks like. So even in this, we can see that it depends on the AWS CLI. So this token gets cached, like once a request is made, it gets cached, and then it stays there for further request. After some time, it actually expires. But then there is that AWS credential, like the user's credential, which is kind of an access ID to use AWS using your console or your CLI. So that refreshes it though. So that's not a concern, like expiring of this token. And basically some changes would be needed for this. An immediate solution would be shipping the AWS CLI in Meshery's Docker image. This is a little painful. Like the thing is that we can let the client libraries handle authentication. They can just call the AWS commands and do whatever they want when they actually want to connect with the cluster and interact with. Or there is another application binary, I'm not sure, haven't looked into it. There are some things with this. So one thing, the original AWS CLI, it's actually a Python binary. It's compiled with Python, and that leads us again to the problem of statically linked binaries. So with that binary, there'll be some shared libraries again. I actually tried deploying that. I mean, I actually tried using that library. I've lost the error, but it was looking for shared libraries. So when using AWS CLI in Meshery container, we'll need to take care of it. Other than this, there is this AWS IAM authenticator, and this probably is also a binary. However, this might provide an API. I haven't looked into it. Also, something would need to be done through the console. So a token would have to generate it first, and then this binary would be using it to connect with this. So I'm really not sure about this right now. So in this PR, I have implemented the immediate solution, and the Docker file I'll be updating in some time, like once I figured the shared libraries thing. Other than that, the other thing would be copying the user's AWS credentials, like the one that are stored in here in this file, if you'd see. So they need to be copied in the cluster as well, so that they can be used while using the AWS binary. So basically this PR is about that. And I won't actually do a complete demo. That would expose my credentials, but a little bit explanation on this. It first looks for the directory, like the .aws/credentials directory. If it exists, it mounts the directory, not exactly mounts, it copies the directory into Meshery's container. And if you don't want to read that, then it expects the access key and access secret key, which are basically the credentials, to be supplied as environment variables. And
Rudraksh, let me ask you this real quick. How does it copy from a file system that
using
in
the
concept?
Docker client, like I have.
Seems like some security software may flag Meshery.
Is it? So basically, it's using the Docker client to copy it. It's an API, so not issues related to, yeah.
Nice. Oh, let me rephrase my question just in case. Is this function being performed when the .aws folder is mounted, or is it also being performed when it's not mounted?
No, actually, this function would be called when users would be calling mesheryctl system config EKS.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah.
I thought we were talking about the server. Sorry.
Yeah, it's actually not mounting. Like we could have mounted, but it would have created an extra mount. And when someone was not actually using an EKS cluster, that mount wouldn't have made sense.
Yeah, but okay. So, but sorry to interrupt. So, but the problem here is, yeah, I'm sorry to be interrupting, but the problem is if you go to deploy Meshery without using mesheryctl, then you'll be stuck without access to. You'll have to provide your AWS. Like it'll be the UX and it's not just the UX. It's
so
we'll have.
They won't need this for in-cluster deployments. So Helm is out of the way. And other than that, like if they manually apply the docker compose file, do you want to say that? Like if they do docker compose apply docker compose.yaml, because this would be only when Meshery server is running out of the cluster. So
yep, which is the default deployment today.
Yeah.
It'll also be the case that it'll be a potential hindrance when contributors build locally and don't use mesheryctl to start the server.
Okay, so in that case, like they won't actually, so if they are not using a EKS cluster for this, it won't be a problem. If they are using, then we would expect them to have this credential in their local directory, right?
Yeah. But the server won't look for it there. It won't, right? Just mesheryctl. So what I'm getting at is like if you diverge from an
if it would be running locally, the client libraries can just read it from the file system itself. So
sure, but you're building this into mesheryctl, which wouldn't be used. It would just be Meshery server that's built, unless I'm misunderstanding.
I'm not sure that I'm getting you.
Well, so if you so the code that you're discussing is going into mesheryctl.
Yeah.
And then so it would be the one that would look to the .aws folder, retrieve the credentials.
Yep.
Okay, would Meshery server do that?
If it is present, the AWS directory is present, it would do it like indirectly. But
Meshery server would do it?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean,
okay, that's good.
So the client libraries, they just execute the AWS CLI And when they do, the AWS CLI automatically locates that .aws folder. So when Meshery server is running and in Docker containers, we copy this over to the containers file system, and in local file systems,
Are you doing all
the
that
user
to? Are you doing all that to avoid another mount? Because
Uh,
you're deviating from the prior prior path, and when you do, any number of considerations need to be accounted for, and so I'm trying to
well, that's true.
I mean, it's not like, hey, you need to say sometimes you need to
But
deviate something.
Another reason could be like if some wrong credentials get mounted, like this command would also take care of if the credentials have actually expired. It would stop the user at that point, like don't execute this, these credentials won't work, please try to generate new one. If they mount it at the start time, there is no guarantee that they'll work until and unless we do something in the Meshery server itself. Okay.
Yeah, it's not an easy. There's a few, kind of like what Neha was going over. It's like, it feels pretty good. Like what you're doing, feels pretty good. Like certainly, by the way, our goal, and Hussein has been trying to chip away at this, somewhat, not quite yet successfully, but getting there, is trying to get off of the dependencies on external CLI, external binaries. Just to clarify, of the proposal here, Meshery server will continue to be dependent upon AWS CLI?
Yeah.
Okay.
And mesheryctl would get rid of that dependency. We are doing everything using AWS SDK. So
nice. And Meshery server can't use the same SDK?
no, actually, there is no way in the SDK right now. Like I couldn't find anything. Neither it's mentioned over the internet. Like people have been struggling with this. So also we'll need to then look into how the client libraries will actually interact with the AWS SDK, because right now the client library is only, where is that config? Yeah, only expect a command like the AWS command here. So they are not so smart. It's the problem.
Cool, good. I'm going to try to be quiet because we've been, for my part, I don't understand why mesheryctl can connect using the SDK, but Meshery server can't. Then you don't have to explain it here. Like I've taken up enough time, but I'll hit you up in Slack or something, in the design spec or whatever.
I see that Hussein might also be reviewing this PR. So if there isn't any immediate concerns, we can go review the PR and come back to this on the next meeting if needed. We have two more topics for today. So let's try to get that covered as well. Lee or Aditya, would you like to talk about the next milestone?
We'll skip just because we're out of time. So.
Okay, sure. Okay. And Piyush, could you give a quick demo on the recent changes in mesheryctl perf?
Okay, I'll share my screen. Just a
yep.
Okay, there are some changes in mesheryctl perf. Let's see what are those. Mesheryctl perf h. So there were two commands that were perf view and perf list. People were really confused on how to use them. Which one is for profiles, which one is to you the results. So we have removed those two commands and we have introduced two new commands, that is perf profile and perf result. Let's check how these work. If I'll just write mesheryctl perf profile, I will get what should I say, a standard 25 profiles returned from Meshery server. These will be the latest profiles having the changes on server. So 25 will be listed with perf profile. But I want to search something. I want to search Abhishek. Let's, for an example, Abhishek. So if I will write Abhishek as an argument, now we will actually search for the profiles only having the name or the word Abhishek. Okay, so we can see there is one profile having the term Abhishek. What if I want to search something that has two words? Let's say test and then a space and the word profile. So if I will search it like this will give you results, the profiles that have the word test profile. Okay, and one more thing, that we might want to look into some additional information about these profiles. So for that thing, we can actually just pass this flag that is expand. If I will pass this expand, we will get some additional info about the profiles here, like the endpoint, QPS, service mesh. Last one was already there. That's the thing about perf profile. Yeah, output is still supported. We can just do it like this and we will have the output here. Okay, now let's go to perf result. So if I will write help, you can see that perf result needs the profile ID as an argument, and how it works is really simple. Perf result, then just copy and paste one profile ID here. Now this will return 25 results from the performance profile ID. Okay. Similarly, we can implement the search thing here. Like if I want to search per file, it will only return the test having the term per file. So I have 4 tests with the terms per file. That's how this works. Okay, this is about the latest changes in mesheryctl perf. And now let's check out the SMP tests with mesheryctl perf. Let me change. Okay, previously we were having issues with persisting our SMP results. So I have fixed it and I would like to demo that. So if I'll just show you the file that I'm going to use, and it has the SMP version, the profile ID I want to associate this result with, the name of the test I can name it for file test2, and the rest of the information about the test, like the endpoint, the load generator, protocols, connection RPS, duration. I'll save it and I'll quit. Let's try. I'm running Meshery right now locally, as you can see. Okay, sorry. I feel I have to log in first. Okay, it's not running now. Just a second. Okay, I'm logged in. Let's try now. So as you can see, the results are successfully published to the remote provider. And how can I say that? We can see the request that was made to a specific profile that has been picked up from the file. It has been saved. If I'll route to, what should I say, Meshery here. Okay, I forgot what was the profile name. How do I search now? Yeah, file test 2. It was just ran recently, 837, 836. So it's being persisted now. Any comments, suggestions, reviews?
So one thing for the perf commands, like there is a flag -o using which you can specify the output like JSON and YAML. I guess we can also have a SMP flag there so that people can store that profile in an SMP file itself, in a SMP file format itself.
You mean output like SMP flag, which will create a file or help us creating a file?
No, like the JSON flag that you just demoed right now, right? It gives output as JSON. So if we could also have an SMP flag which gave output structured as a SMP profile.
I see. I think we can do that. One thing that is like kind of a obstacle, that is we do not have service mesh field in the what should I say? What was that name? I forgot. Just a second. Performance test config. Yeah, performance test config structure. We do not have service mesh field there to add what service mesh we want to use to run the performance test. That could be one thing, and I think we can implement it.
Yeah, that's a great suggestion from Rudraksh. We should make sure, and we should actually just make sure that the JSON or the YAML that is produced is one and the same, like it is SMP compatible, or like it is SMP format. Because the spec and Meshery go hand in hand. So we should, if there's a difference and it doesn't make sense to output all of that in JSON or something, then we should definitely have a separate, flag. But we should probably analyze why there would be a difference.
There is a difference. The response returned from the server side is completely different from the structure for SMP conflict.
Yeah. So the response from the server for the definition of a profile.
Yeah.
Okay. And then and so like in terms of like the SMP protos and what they define, it should, we definitely want to make, we definitely need to overcome any gaps that are there. So we definitely need to update what's being output to match that, both the profile definition and a specific set of results. Those should align verbatim with the spec. Like they should be, otherwise Meshery is not implementing the spec. So we both might need to change the spec and also change Meshery to align. And yeah, and I suspect there's a number of things that the spec calls for that we're not gathering or we're not emitting, that we're not. One. Yeah.
Okay. So this is the performance. Just a second. It's this performance profile. Go to definition. Yeah. This is the response of a profile returned from the Meshery server. Where it is.
I think we want performance results to be in SMP format, not performance profile to be in SMP format, right?
Profiles for the test. I'm confused.
Yep, ultimately both. But yeah, it's most prominently that it's the test results that people are most focused on with respect to SMP. But SMP as a format, as a spec, like if you just provide someone test results, they're meaningless unless you say, well, this was the profile that generated those results. And also that's meaningless unless you're saying, here's what the environment looked like. So like it needs to capture all of that. And that's kind of what the spec calls for. So it's true that like stuff that we would get from the Prometheus node exporter satisfies part of their spec. Stuff about the configuration of the profile, like what load you're going to generate for how long, for how intense, and from how many sources, and what endpoints you're going to hit and how many of those and all that. Like that's the profile. Are you going to send request headers and content type and all that? Like that needs to be part of it because that all matters. And then the third significant chunk is, well, there's a couple, is what are the results from that profile? If you took that thing, if you ran it. Another component to that is, okay, well, what mesh did you run against? At what version, with what configuration? Also, you might have particulars about your application, which has a different like signature and behavior than, and so the spec needs to aspire to most of that. There's some aspects of that the spec just needs to point out, like link out to somewhere else. Like if you really want to fully describe an application, all that it has is like, look, then bring your CNAB definition or your own definition or something else. Anyway, point is, between the two things that we're discussing right here, profile config and individual test result, those are both components of the spec. And one of the two of those, Meshery or SMP, or both of them should change, and so that they can be, so that we can stand tall in saying that Meshery is an implementation of SMP. And since this community owns that spec, either one can change. Hopefully that makes sense. I mean, like it's just like, let's get the two things aligned, which I think, and it's just an explanation that the spec is concerned with all of this. It is at its foremost most concerned with like specific analyses of a given test result. Like that's kind of what most people would expect and think. But yeah, it's trying to standardize that. So it needs a standard way of saying, what were your QPS, or because someone else may have written it down as RPS and it's being written down as QPS. And so what, like, okay, cool. So Piyush, one other thing, I probably missed it, but like I missed the linkage between the perf profile. When someone runs mesheryctl perf profile, they search for a profile by name. It looked like a pretty good user experience where they can, search for things. One thing where they could search for a multi-word name without using quotation marks. You're able to do that because the command accepts a flag at the end. We've been using the word view as a subcommand to perform and expand. And so give thought to the consistency there. The linkage that I missed was when you jumped from perf profile to collecting an actual result. I saw that you used the GUID, mesheryctl perf result, and then a GUID, but I don't know where the user got the GUID for that specific result after they looked up their profile.
Okay, how they got this profile ID?
The result ID, yeah. Or is that a result ID? Or is that...
It's a profile ID. Like I want
Oh,
to search results associated with this performance profile.
Okay. Can you use Abhishek right there?
No, we can't use Abhishek because then we will be like, we won't be able to implement that search thing. Like, and now I can also search where it is. It should be.
But that's where we break.
Two words, perf and file, from all these tests. And if I will have a word like a profile name, maybe that would make it hard to search exactly, like hard to make it work. It would be really complex for me to implement, or for us to implement, I mean. Okay, so profile ID, there is a separate command for profiles. Someone can search and get the profile ID from there, and then he can just search for his results. We want to search for a particular result having the terms, he can search that too. If he wants just to list out and see this data about the results, he can just do that also.
Nice. By the way, you put in a lot of work here. You put a lot of thought into it as well. This is really, I mean, that's really cool, that column-based output. Here's a request. Think on this, if you would. mesheryctl perf result, profile name, and then whatever, and then either the result name or the result ID. The reason for profile name is there's a lack of, it's a wonky user experience. It's like in one area you can call something by name, but then when you go to dig into it, no, you can't call it by name, you have to call it by ID. Well, supporting the two of them would be good. And I know that.
How will I do it? Like at the very simple doubt that I have is, how will I differentiate what is, like, what are the arguments that are related to profile name? There can be multiple words, right? Like
the same way that, yeah, totally. The same way that you do with the profile name when they first look up profile. You show them both results. You say, pick one. Or you say, hey, there's multiple of these, the same name. Can you specify the ID, please? By the way, here's the three that have the same name, and here's their three profile IDs. Like, make it easy on the user.
So what about the words or the terms that you want to search in the result name?
Same thing. And you're already doing it, actually. Like perf result. In the table output above, you have a collection of perf results because there's many for that profile.
No, but like I'll try to say it again. Like, let's say there are 5 arguments here. 3 of them are for profile name and 2 of them are for the results, the result name, I mean. So how will I actually distinguish between what are the arguments that are supposed to be collected and searched as profile name as the profile? This belongs to the profile name. That means I have to search the profile with the name, and the rest of the words are for searching the result or the test.
Yeah, got you. Either using flags is one, or quotation marks, and just enforcing the fact that the arguments have to follow a specific sequence. So the first thing that is in quotation marks is the profile name. The second thing in quotation, the second argument is the profile ID. I mean, you're doing something. I think the thing that you're getting snagged on is the fact that you're supporting white space, and and that's all. That's cool. Actually, I wouldn't do it like if I were or knowing. It's kind of an interest. This is an interesting phenomenon. When you're bringing a better user experience, I think, than most people have with a CLI. And I wouldn't do it. I would expect the CLI to crash or to consider that where I wrote perf file, I would assume that it would think that file was another command I was trying to give it or something. And it's funny because we collectively, all of us, get held back by, you're bringing a better UX than people have experienced, and you're being held back by, by the fact that that isn't the common experience for CLIs. Is part of how you're getting held back. The other reason you're getting held back is because there's a reason why it isn't a common experience, because you can't tell the difference between what's a flag and what's the they have to put it in quotes, or they have to give it with a flag. It can be also, the flag could also just be a command, like it's a good reflection. Go, if you would, do Docker network inspect. Go inspect the Docker networks. Like go list out all the Docker networks. Go grab a specific name and inspect it, and like look at the fact that they're intertwining object names and commands. Thank you, Aditya. And just reflect on, like, yeah, Docker container run, you'll get into, yeah. And then Piyush, like, this is it's not easy. You're doing great. Performance. Yeah. And you need more feedback than just spot feedback. Actually, it's gotten you a long way, but actually you guys need to get together and actually go through it, and Nevendu, this stuff won't fly. Like, we're having inconsistencies being presented here with the other, like, number one rule, like consistency. If we need to break it, like, break it, but you need to make sure that everything else is consistent as well. But this is, it's impressive, actually. Yeah. Nice to see the examples as well in the usage. That's nice. Cool. We're way over. Sorry.
Yep, I will review it as well. All right, since we are way out of time, let's conclude this meeting. Thank you, Piyush, for the demo, and thank you everyone for joining. We'll see you next week. Bye.
Bye. Thank you, Piyush. It's not easy.
Bye. Good night. Good morning. Bye.